So we're starting out with the 77s of Daniel.
Yeah, this is the foundation of so much of biblical prophecy.
And the Secretary of the Treasury.
Well, thank you all very much, and thank you for joining us to sign this historic reform. This bill is the most important legislation for financial institutions in the last 50 years.
I wanted to show you a little bit about the St. Germain Fund also while we're at it, because that's also very important, because how are they going to fund this entire universal basic income, especially as the economies are falling? How do they still have money? Well, they prepared for hundreds of years, actually, and I'm going to show you real quick how much money is in the St. Germain Fund. And here we're going to find out what they have. It says one of the protected funds said to be involved is called the St. Germain World Trust. This fund contains deliverable precious metals and currencies worth upwards of 1 quattro ordicillion US dollars.
So thank you all again. I'm very pleased to sign this darn St. Germain Depository Institutions Act of 1982.
And it blew me away. I was crying, I was shaking, I was scared. I didn't know what to make of it or what to do with it.
And that was St. Germain speaking through you, and your husband had recorded it.
Right. He had identified himself as St. Germain, and so my husband came back and he said, "Have you ever heard the name St. Germain?" And I said, "No, I haven't the foggiest idea." And he said, "Neither have I." So we went and got our books and looking on the index to see if we could figure out who St. Germain was. And we called some of our friends saying, "Have you ever heard the name St. Germain before? Do you have any idea what it's all about?" And so gradually we're finding out more and more about who he is.
And I will find out in more detail who he is, but in a few words, can you identify him?
Well, his energy has been known before as Joseph, the father of Jesus, Christopher Columbus, Francis Bacon, let me think, Proclus, the Greek philosopher.
So he's been around.
Right, and he had a lot to do with the Declaration of Independence and beginning this country. And he was also, this is exciting, I love this part.
All right, tell us this part, this is exciting.
When he was the prophet Samuel, and when he had a lot to do with the inspiration of the beginnings of the Declaration of Independence of this country and everything, his energy was so involved in it, he came to be known as Uncle Sam.
France, 1760. The wonder man of Europe runs for his life. No records exist of his birth, death, or true identity. He was considered a genius in art, music, politics, and alchemy. Although he looked 40, many believed he was at least 150 years old. He called himself the Count of St. Germain. Others called him the man who would not die. There are people in contemporary America who believe that St. Germain is very much with us.
So I will be deferring payments on student loans at 0 interest until further notice. And on the payroll tax, we'll be terminating the payroll tax after I hopefully get elected. We'll be terminating the payroll tax, so that will mean anywhere from $5,000 to even more per family.
It's been documented that in 1729, St. Germain was working on the establishment and funding of a new world monetary trust. The New World Order, guys? The St. Germain World Trust now contains the majority of the wealth that will be distributed to the world once the new financial reset takes place. And as we've already seen that we were one of the first people to go ahead and do this. That's why we got the stimulus package right now, guys. Today, St. Germain World Trust Prosperity Program is known as NESARA and GESARA. NESARA stands for National Economic Security and Reformation Act. It applies only to the United States, while GESARA, the Global Economic Security and Reformation Act, applies to the rest of the world. For centuries, elite families who follow the light or the agenda of the second beast, Satan, the beast of the land, has been contributing to the World Trust. Saint Germain specifically stated that the money in his World Trust would be used in future for prosperity and humanitarian purposes. Peace and security, huh?
We have to prepare for a more angry world, and how to prepare? It means to take the necessary action. And I see the need for action. I see the need for a great reset. We will now start a quite high number of task forces to look at all the different issues, and we will present all those ideas to the people assembled in Davos.
What we want to do in Davos this year in this respect is to push the reset button.
So yeah, what we've got here is this new Sanhedrin and the dedication of the third temple altar, which is unbelievable to see. We thought this was fake news, friends. We actually have a dedication ritual for the altar, sacrificial altar of the third temple.
And just like that, everything in the world is made right and pure again. The Great Reset. What could be simpler?
This is the first time we meet in Washington, America's capital, after you declared, Mr. President, Jerusalem as Israel's capital. And this was a historic proclamation, followed by your bold decision to move the embassy by our upcoming National Independence Day. I want to tell you that the Jewish people have a long memory. So we remember the proclamation of the great King Cyrus the Great, Persian king, 2,500 years ago. He proclaimed that the Jewish exiles in Babylon can come back and rebuild our temple in Jerusalem. We remember 100 years ago, Lord Balfour, who issued the Balfour Proclamation that recognized the rights of the Jewish people in our ancestral homeland. We remember 70 years ago, President Harry S. Truman was the first leader to recognize the Jewish state. And we remember how a few weeks ago, President Donald J. Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital.
Right, and we are the temple of the Holy Spirit, our body.
Yeah.
So this, you know, when you've got Christians funding, some Christians funding this third temple, it's just like, this is not going in a good direction, is it?
I think a lot of people believe that when this temple is built, either the Messiah will help build it or he will come after it's built. And so they're still expecting that Messiah. If we're funding it and we believe that the Messiah already came, we're kind of feeding into that same lie.
Well, the Antichrist, potentially.
Yeah, the abomination of desolation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think? I mean, this is pretty serious stuff. This is not, you know, the fact that they're actually doing an offering by the looks of it. This is not some silly little thing. This is
this is a big deal.
They're serious about this, you know.
Yeah, I believe that this is a symbol of those sacrifices that are going to be happening in the third temple.
Wow.
So no, it's
crazy times, my friends.
It is very crazy times.
We'll have it built very quickly. A lot of people wouldn't be doing it quickly like that. We're going to have it built very quickly and very inexpensively. They put an order in front of my desk last week for $1 billion. I said, $1 billion? What's that for? We're going to build an embassy. I said, we're not going to spend $1 billion.
Okay.
And we're actually doing it for about $250,000. $250,000. So check that out. Now it's temporary.
There is a shift in an entire frequency band upon the plane, from the Piscean era to the Aquarian era, that which some call the New Age. And it is an understanding of the release of dogma, ritual, and limitation into the understanding of the beauty of life in the flow, to be free-flowing, if you will.
What can we do to not only be more prosperous, but be happier at this time when you might say there's a type of recession, when pocketbooks are straining, when people are having a hard time paying bills, saving money, buying houses?
And life is a grind, eh?
And life is a grind. Yes.
Just like the Miami Bridge disaster, I really am not an expert in this field, but the unique thing about my channel is that we can look at the facts and decide ourselves what really happened.
But again, we have some unusual firefighting equipment in this area, which definitely the smoke is getting much, much thicker now. As we're looking out our window, we're hovering at about 1,600 feet, 1,500 feet, and I'm telling you, this smoke is probably...
Building 7 stayed upright for 7 hours after the World Trade Center main buildings were hit.
If fear isn't enough to keep Congress in line, money is. The CIA routinely bribes senators with stolen loot from the bankroll programs. Every senator has been bribed with a minimum of $200 million deposited into a Bank of America account in Canada. You would never hear the media networks report about Nasara. To maintain silence, major news networks such as CNN are paid in the tune of $2 billion annually. Some of this loot is funneled by the Mormon Church in Utah through Senator Orrin Hatch's office in Bank of America. Not only is Congress bribed, but the entire Joint Chiefs of Staff and the upper tier of the government, including the President himself, receives these payments as well. Only the Provost Marshal has the lawful authority to arrest these individuals, but sadly, he won't do his job either. It seems the United States military is full of pencil-pushing politicians who care more about advancement than doing their job. And not surprisingly, much disinformation about Nasara can be found on the internet. Prominent naysayers include Quatloos.com, which is rumored to be a CIA front, Nasara.org, which is maintained by the Bush family, Sherry Shriner, and various internet channelers receiving their messages from telepathic spooks have all contributed to the confusion. Even the information on Wikipedia is in error. Wikipedia gives you the history of CIA agent Harvey Bernard's Nasara Law. If you look closely, this law stands for the National Economic Stabilization and Recovery Act, which would have made reforms to the economy and replaced the income tax with a national sales tax. This law was rejected by Congress in the 1990s. But there's little mention of the National Economic Security and Reformation Act on Wikipedia or its ramifications. The next step is to announce Nasara to the world, but it's not an easy task to do. Many powerful groups have tried to prevent the implementation of Nasara. The Nasara law requires that at least once a year, an effort be made to announce the law to the public. 3 current U.S. Supreme Court judges control the committee in charge of Nasara's announcement. These judges have used their overall authority to secretly sabotage Nasara's announcement. In 2001, after much negotiation, the Supreme Court justices ordered the current Congress to pass resolutions approving Nasara. This took place on September 9, 2001, 18 months after Nasara became law. On September 10, 2001, George Bush Sr. moved into the White House to steer his son on how to block the announcement. The next day, on September 11, 2001, at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Alan Greenspan was scheduled to announce the new U.S. Treasury bank system, debt forgiveness for all U.S. citizens, and abolishment of the IRS as the first part of the public announcements of Nasara. Just before the announcement at 9 a.m., Bush Sr. ordered the demolition of the World Trade Center to stop the international banking computers on floors 1 and 2 and the North Tower from initiating the new U.S. Treasury bank system. Explosives in the World Trade Center were planted by both CIA and Mossad operatives and detonated remotely in Building 7, which was demolished later that day in order to cover up their crime. With the announcement, Nasrallah stopped dead in his tracks. George Bush Sr. decapitated any hopes of returning the government back to the people. The Bush family was originally offered $300 trillion to cooperate with Nasrallah, but instead, they chose to maintain their control over us, so in the end, the Bush family will end up with nothing. The attacks of 9/11 had managed to stop the announcement of Nasrallah dead in its tracks. Many more attempts have been made over the years, but the Bush family has managed to stop them. These people won't be able to get away with their crimes forever. Little by little, their wealth is being dismantled right before their eyes.
This property was originally built in 1919 by Eugene Myers. Obviously, Eugene Myers was on the board of the Federal Reserve. He owned the Washington Post. He was one of the wealthiest people in the world at the time, and really, he wanted to have the most opulent house in the world, and it's really what he created here.
And how did your family end up with the property? What's the story?
Well, the story was that after the Myers had the family, they gave it to Yale University in trust. Yale University transferred it over to Rockefeller University, and we actually bought the property off of Rockefeller University. So,
Donald Trump converted to Judaism 2 years ago, according to White House official. There it is. That's his blog. He said, President Donald Trump converted to Judaism 2 years ago and joined Chabad Lubavitch Synagogue in New York City, according to a high-level White House official. Mr. Goldberg says the story has allegedly been held by CNN's editors for months, but is due to be released within the next few days. David Elias Goldberg, a fellow at the Jewish Center of Anti-Semitic Study, has also interviewed the White House source. According to the source, Trump was pushed by his daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner to join the faith. At first, Trump resisted, stating it would threaten his base of evangelical Christian voters. However, he had a change of heart and officially converted in early 2017. The ceremony was held in private and closely guarded for nearly 2 years.
No, come here. Get over. Say a couple of words. Come on. It's an honor to be here with the first Jewish president of the United States. And if he isn't, he should be. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for everything you have done for the Jewish people. I want to thank you for everything you've done for the Jewish people's ancestral homeland. You are going to be remembered there for 1,000 years. You are going to be remembered there for 1,000 years.
משכן הזה ינוע בדרכים, אנחנו במדבר, מדבר סיני. צריכים להגיע לירושלים.
You think we're in the time it's almost here, the third temple?
Yes, absolutely. Many Muslims, talking about the high, let's say, rank or hierarchy in the Muslim religions, came to us and asked us, please build a temple. Why? Because the temple is for everybody. It's for the whole nations to prosper and thrive. So they came to us and asked, please build a temple.
Information, and by summer, it is expected Trump will fully address his new faith in an evening televised news conference. He is clearly the most pro-Israel president in the history of America. He's given Israel every single thing that they've wanted, and he's about to give them war with Iran.
You okay?
And so, has he converted? So, I want to show you one more article. This is, let me see if I can.
This is the Times of Israel.
Yeah, the Times of Israel. This was published March 22nd, 2019. This is the Times of Israel. Trump, the first Jewish president of the United States.
Now, that's not us saying that. That's Times of Israel. Times of what nation? Israel.
So the people in Israel, that's an English-speaking newspaper in Israel, and that's what they read, that Donald Trump is the first Jewish president of the United States.
And how did they qualify that, Rick?
They gave a list of things that he did for Israel.
First of one, of course, moving the embassy to Jerusalem.
That's right.
That was a big deal.
Then recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. He's the first sitting U.S. president to visit the Western Wall. They gave him credit for defeating ISIS. They gave him credit for rebuking the United Nations when the UN criticized Israel. They credit him with closing the Palestinian office in Washington, D.C. And they said these things, what is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these 6 things qualify Donald Trump to be named the first Jewish president of the United States.
And that's what the Times of Israel said.
Again, that was not David Duke's newsletter.
Right.
It's a Jewish-owned newspaper. And they're proclaiming Donald Trump to be the first Jewish president of the United States. So now when you look at this David Elias Goldberg saying that a White House insider told him that President Trump converted to Judaism 2 years ago.
Suddenly it doesn't sound so crazy, does it?
Now it's not too crazy. And that CNN knows about it, and CNN is sitting on the story and will be releasing it at some point.
It was history's darkest hour. Millions of innocent, wonderful, and beautiful lives, men, women, and children, were extinguished as part of a systematic attempt to eliminate the Jewish people. It was the most savage crime against God and his children.
We were so deeply moved to see that picture of you touching the stones of the wall. And may I say, we were deeply moved to see First Lady Melania Trump touching the stone on that wall. And equally moved when we saw your daughter Ivanka and your son-in-law Jared do the same.
Okay, so let's just, what if it's true? What if it's true? What does that say to you, Doc?
That says to me there's been such a major shift in values in America. It's no longer Judeo-Christian values anymore. It's Judeo values now.
Yes. Yes.
A peace deal has finally been struck. But peace takes more than signatures and handshakes. The world is talking about the Israel-UAE deal. Tonight we'll break it down for you. We'll discuss what it means.
This year, dozens of representatives took part in the first convention of 70 nations. And though the idea to replace the UN with a religious body may sound far-fetched, it attracts participants to this convention.
So the 70 nations concept is held in the highest rabbinical order and influencing of the White House.
Thank you all. And of course, I want to especially welcome Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Your presence here today is a testament to the importance of this occasion, not only for the Trump administration, but in a very personal way, for you. For you, each of you, for the pursuit of peace, and for President Trump himself. Thank you. Dear friends, what a glorious day. Remember this moment. This is history. President Trump, by recognizing history, you have made history.
Just a few days before Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and while heads of state are meeting at the UN General Assembly, a unique procession linked to the events takes place in Jerusalem. A group of people from different parts of the world gathered for a ritual sacrifice as part of the so-called 70 Nations Initiative which aims to establish an alternative body to the UN based on biblical law and located on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
At the time of the conference, the coin of the year was Nikki Haley. And you can see on the coin, if we look closely, we can see the first two flags is Israel and the United States. And this is a coin, a commemorative coin, but it's basically Israel replacing the United Nations. You see this here is the United Nations with the flags, but Israel is first, United States is second.
The Temple Mount is in our hands. The Temple Mount is in our hands. Is in our hands. Words that lifted the spirit of the entire nation. We are in Jerusalem and we are here to stay.
So they know about all this, but they're doing it anyway. They know about a third temple, they're doing it anyway. Because the Jews believe the 70 nations, the Goyim, which is the nations, have to build their temple.
This meeting today is to give relevance, to give that it's important that the other nations who need the physicality, that they are going to get their physicality. We're going to build the physical temple, and the Jewish people are going to go up to a higher level of spirituality.
These are the 70 nations, the 70 sons from Japheth, Shem, and Ham. Okay, and this area is also the area promised to Abraham. Here you see Abraham's route from Ur up to Haram over to Egypt and going up the Euphrates River. He was promised from the Nile to the Euphrates. Okay, that's why the peace accords are going to be called the Abraham Accords. Okay,
Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain will establish embassies, exchange ambassadors, and begin the cooperate and work together so strongly to cooperate as partners across the broad range of sectors, from tourism to trade and healthcare to security. They're going to work together. They are friends. The Abraham Accords also open the door for Muslims around the world to visit the historic sites in Israel and to peacefully pray at Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, the third holiest site in Islam. Together, these agreements will serve as the foundation for a comprehensive peace across the entire region, something which nobody thought was possible, certainly not in this day and age, maybe in many decades from now, but one founded on shared interests, mutual respect, and friendship. To our honored guests from Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain, congratulations on this outstanding achievement. Congratulations.
this is replacing the United Nations, and these nations are drunk and bowing to Israel, to the United States. It's astonishing. But the scriptures must be fulfilled. It's just a matter of understanding and deciphering what do these things mean. Why does that altar, where they dedicated the altar, there is going to be a third temple of some sort. They're saying it has to be on the Temple Mount. This is their Mashiach, okay? And they're charging him to build the house. They have to have the court of the 70 nations. You see the 70 seats going around in a circle. The third temple. This is Bible prophecy.
One ring to rule them all.
President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have signed an agreement with the United Arab Emirates. Here on my channel, we focus a lot on symbols, symbolism, subliminal messages. So when I first saw this coin, it really blew me away. This right here is yet another example of the occult forces that work in the shadows in this world at work. It's similar to money magic. Money itself is sigil magic. The New World Order put its plans on paper and they called it money. Millions of people around the world are carrying this around in their pockets. Money itself is a primary example of this sigil magic. lesser magic. So it's interesting that they chose to place this imagery on a coin. Once again, we're back to money. And here they are showing us their plans on this currency. From a very basic standpoint, when I first looked at this imagery, I couldn't help but notice, starting from the base of the symbol as it works up, you see the sword itself starts to disintegrate into all of these different symbols. What's most interesting is the symbol they chose at the top, or it's the symbol at the end of the road. All of these symbols leading to the dove of peace, peace and security, peace and safety. But what comes after that? Saturn. Some of you may not understand the significance of this, but Saturn represents Satan. It goes back to Rome. They worshipped Saturn, celebrating Saturnalia, and the Greeks worshipped Kronos. Same deity, both represent Satan, which leads to the black cube. You also need to understand about the black cube of Saturn and the connection to the Jewish priests who wear the tefillin, or the black cube, on their foreheads. It's also interesting to note that we find the black cube in Mecca. And here you see the Muslims walking circles, or rings, around the black cube of Saturn, Satan. So leading up to this peace and safety, and afterwards Saturn or Satan, we find that the sword guard is wrapped in prayer beads. Prayer beads only serve one purpose, and that's to count repetitive prayers. Both Islam and Catholicism share their love of prayer beads, which came from pagan traditions. On the guard of the sword in the middle, we can see the Babylonian sun wheel, and this goes back to Rome again and pagan worship. It's also known as the Wheel of the Year. And then we have the satellite dish with Wi-Fi and binary code. This seems to reflect our current state of Big Brother surveillance in some ways. And next we have the gears. The gears go back to time, and that goes back to Saturn. And we also have a syringe to represent the vaccine for their crown virus. Moving on from there, we have the date palm tree. And it's interesting, the Latin name for the date palm tree is the Phoenix dactylifera. When you look at all of the symbols on the sword, and so many of them have to do with technology, you may have been wondering to yourself, why is there a palm tree there? And I think I found the answer. It's not just a palm tree, it's a date palm. And what's most interesting about this is that the Latin term for the date palm is actually the Phoenix dactylifera. I believe that's why they put the date palm on the sword among all of the other symbols, showing us their end game. The eagle, sometimes the double-headed eagle, also the phoenix, is a symbol of great power and endurance. The Romans, the House of Habsburg, the House of Rothschild, the Nazis, and the United States have all used this symbol.
When you're there in Israel, you do sense something.
You do.
And the thing is that, you know, when that declaration came, I mean, Israel loves Donald Trump. Most of the Israelis, they see him like Cyrus because of this. They see him like Cyrus because of this. They see him like Cyrus because of this.